I do a fair amount of casting, and I like that brand, but I have trouble because a lot of times they only need like a fraction of an ounce of resin and hardener. So the one on the right is the hardener, and it comes with a little plastic sleeve, as a piece of tubing that shoves up over that plunger, and it stops at a half a plunge. So you get a 2-to-1 ratio very nicely. But if I want less than that, just a tiny squirt, I actually recommended to them to change their plungers to put demarcation marks on it, so that I could figure out, okay, I want 3 squirts on the right, and so I need 6 squirts on the left, type of thing. And I could do that without having to guesstimate it. So it worked out pretty well. It was a sloppy marking action, thanks to my wiggly hands. But if you're careful with that, you can get a pretty good ratio. It's really easy.
Did you measure those out, Alan, or you just guesstimate it?
Guesstimated.
Uh-huh.
Do you
That's
worry
why
about
they
air
call it-
in the pump?
I'm sorry?
What about air that might be in the pump line?
Actually, there's very little reflow. So when you start
Okay.
pumping, it's right there at the nozzle.
Cool.
And nothing to make it, harden, because there's only one each. So I've never had anything like that. This comes out immediately.
Cool.
Works pretty well for little things, little casting little parts and jewelry stuff and whatever.
Okay. So if there's questions, go ahead and speak up, but I'm just going to keep us moving along. Otherwise,
No problem.
we can always go back. Still you, Alan.
Okay, that was the other one. Limited to 2, so I had to pick one of about 8 that I thought were kind of cool. I use a lot of acetone and things like that in the square cans, and it's always been a pain I can't open them by hand. I have to use a screwdriver to pry them up. And I figured, wait a minute, I'm the only one who uses it. It's locked in my shop or whatever. So I just need something that'll keep it closed to some degree, but that I could pop it open with a fingernail. So I took out one of my favorite tools, which is my box cutter knife, and I trimmed off maybe half or 2/3 of that little, locking lip that's on the top of the nozzle. And if you take off, maybe half of it or something like that, you can then, it holds and it seals and it's just fine, but you can pop it off with a fingernail, and it's a lot faster than scrounging around or having a screwdriver nearby whenever you want to do it. So that works very well too.
So Alan, I love this because I have the same problems of pain. You got to get a screwdriver every time to open these things up.
That's right.
So are you cutting that? It looks like just a flat cut across there, correct? And is that right where the tab locks in there?
Actually,
or does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter too much. But what I did was I took took the box cutter and I went down straight at the edge of the lip that hangs over. So I just taken off most of the lip with a straight downward cut with the box cutter.
Okay.
And if you take off, like half of it, or at least a third, you'll get what you want to have too.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna definitely try this.
It's easy and it's there forever.
Yeah.
The only downside I can see is the reason we make those things kind of sort of hard to open is in case you knock the can over and it hits the floor, it's not as likely to spill.
Never had the problem, and it does latch on there. It's not like a loose fit. It does snap on. It's just a lot easier to snap open.
Okay.
Try it. I mean, I've never had the problem, but I
try.
don't knock them around that much.
Yeah.
Less childproof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, don't get kids in my workshop. So yeah, whatever. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Alan. That's
You're
a
welcome.
nice tip.
Bob.
Yeah. Well, Michael Early sent me down the rabbit hole of segmenting again, so I had to find my old segmenting jig. I hate sanding, number one. You've got to be pretty accurate with your pieces when you cut them out. And I have found I've used a table saw sled, I've used a compound miter saw, and I'm always getting fuzzies on it, and you always get some kind of saw mark. So this originally was I found in, I think it was Malcolm Tibbetts' book on segmenting, and it was just a jig that he made up, and I made my version of it. And it's pretty simple. You make a sled that goes on the sanding table, and it just follows one of the slots on there so that you can move it parallel to the wheel. And what that does is it allows you to sand longer without having to clean the wheel with one of those little gummy things that you have to do. So it just makes it a little bit more effective as far as being able to sand. But the idea behind this is that you've got the sled, and then you've got the a fence on the left-hand side there, and you cut pieces that are the angle of the piece that you're working on. So for example, the one that's in that sled, it's one that I'm making 24 sides. So the angle is 15 degrees. And when you put the little wedgy piece in there, it's really operating on 7.5 degrees. So you just slide that little piece of the segmented bowl that you're working on, and you slide it in there, just touch it to the edge of the sanding wheel, and it's not grabby. It runs pretty smooth. You slide that thing in there, pull it out, flip the piece over, slide it back in again, and you've got a nice fine surface for gluing, and it makes putting your rings together a whole lot a lot easier. So it's just, it runs quite a bit faster than hand sanding, which I hate to do. So anyway, I've just made a lot of different sticks and you can use it for other things. If you do small toys, banding, inlays, there's a whole variety of things that you can use it for, but just makes life a whole lot easier if you have a whole lot of things that you're going to have to sand and you need accuracy on your angles.
Another turner goes to the dark side of segmenting.
Every once in a while.
Come to the dark side. We have cookies. We have all sorts of cool stuff in the dark side.
Michael, there you are.
I want chocolate, but I think it's still a good idea.
I've got a bag of chocolate right here.
You deliver? Oh.
This is a
That's
great
pretty
idea.
cool.
I do the same thing. I stand at the sander and I sometimes watch it launch the segments across the room when I press too hard against the sander. So I like this. This is cool.
Yeah, try it. It's really it runs pretty smoothly.
Very cool.
So,
All right.
Yeah, I like it because it's easily reusable too. You know.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well, you can-
the flexibility of just changing that wedge in there, and you got a different angle.
you do that, you can do different sizes. All you do is run that wedge
Yeah.
in there, just
Yeah.
just adjust it to the right size. So it's pretty easy to operate.
All right.
Good job, Bob.
Dan here?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Norm, can you go to the other picture first?
Sure can.
My workbench and my lathe are back to back in the middle of the room, so I can work from either side. And I was operating with one of those pedestal stand dust collection hoods sitting between it, but you couldn't move it because, again, you didn't have room. So I made this frame out of 1x4s where it comes down, it's attached to the ceiling. And the back side of it is not as long, so it doesn't extend down over my workbench. I beveled the edges of the 1x4s for the hood to fit in and just screwed it in. My dust collection hose runs on the ceiling. So this was all out of the way. When I don't need it, I can just push it back. It has knobs on the 4 corners down on the bottom end where I can adjust the tension so that it stays wherever I stop pushing.
Is this here, these knobs?
Correct. So that provides enough tension. And then I took my lamp and attached it with a bracket, the plate that attaches to the wood. So I've got my lamp right in front. So it's always in the right place. And I just expanded from there, little L hooks for the calipers, got my dust collection, my face shield, everything's right there. So everything's within reach. I don't have to move around for anything.
Yep.
So Alan, is that slotted then where those knobs are on that board that comes out? Can you go back there for a second, Norm? Yeah. So is that slotted there then so that slides back? I think that's what you're saying, right?
No, everything's a through hole, so it just pivots.
Oh.
So I've got carriage bolts, 4 on the
Where your headphones
cross
are?
pieces. Yeah, cross
I
pieces
see,
there, and then 4 at the
see.
top. So
Okay.
it pivots on that. It's a square.
So the backboard piece pivots as well. The whole thing swings. I see.
Exactly. So
I got it.
so this board now is over my workbench on the other side. So I've got everything I need right there. So I've got, again, utilizing that space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's double duty. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Pretty
Yeah.
cool. I like that.
When
And
you're,
then the last thing I did was attach the 2.5-inch hose with a gate, and it just sits down between the bench and the lathe. And so whenever I need to do cleanup work, I can bring that hose up and clean up around.
when you got limited space, ceiling mounting is a really handy way of taking care of some of the less heavy stuff you need to have handy.
Yeah, that's worked real well for me.
Yeah. Very nice.
Really good idea.
Yeah, I like the idea. You have your light mounted on there too, and then all your other little handy tools for when you're working on the lathe.
Well, it's made it really nice because when I don't need the hood, I can just push it back over the bench. Then if I'm sanding a bowl, I can bring it right up against the bowl, so I get the best dust collection I've had.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first saw this, I thought, gosh, that's awful close to the spindle on the lathe, but now I understand how it works.
Right, it just pivots back. Every now and then I'll have to tighten the knobs a little bit, but
You took his 24-inch one way and made it a 6-inch swing.
Cool.
All right,
Thanks for sharing that. That's really nice.
move it on. And it's you, Ted.
That's me. Okay, show the other one first.
Yep.
Yeah, there. So I know everybody's in the same boat, right? You're working on the lathe and you put your gouge up there on the top of the lathe, and either vibration or you bump it and over it goes and the tip hits the floor, and you're back to the
Never.
shotgun thing, or it's lost or whatever, right? And so for a long time I was going to make a tool holder like this, and I was going to put a piece that went in through the way of the lathe bed, with a knob on it to kind of lock it in there and stuff, And so I first cut this board out, and I was going to do that. I thought, well, wait a minute, if I want this behind the tailstock or in front of the tailstock, that's going to be a pain to try to make that work on it. So then you go to the next slide then. So what I ended up doing was I had some of those earth magnets, very strong magnets, and I slotted out the magnet so it's just barely sticking out of the bottom of that piece of plywood across there. And I just put 2 of them on it, and believe me, 2 of them is more than enough on it. And then I can put this any place I want on the lathe, and it stays, right? And you just slide it a little bit and it comes right off, but if you push down on it or whatever, it's stable as could be. And then I put a piece of foam, rubber in there. And I haven't glued it in there yet because I didn't know whether I would really like that one or not. In fact, I would recommend, if you have, and I don't have any, the egg carton foam, because I think it would work even better. But this works pretty well, but I think that that would work even better on there. And then I can take that piece when I'm not using it, and I didn't have a picture of that, of course, but I just swing it around on the end of the lathe down there, you can see, and just bang on the side of it, and it's stored, right? And whenever I want it, I just reach down there and pull it off, slap it up on top of the lathe, and I'm ready to go. I mean, it's really, really handy, and it works really well for me. So
Yeah. I'll vouch for it. It's very nice.
that's right. You use it.
Yep.
Preston, I forgot. That's right.
One of several tool holders on the list tonight.
Yeah. So that's that one. And then go to the next slide too on this one. Okay, so behind my lathe, and I know some of you have seen that in my backdrop photo here on Zoom. And then like Preston and others, Bob and others have experienced it. So I have my tools on the other side of my lathe on the wall. And I've had several different ways to have those tools there, but I made this one, I guess it must be close to 2 years ago now, over a year ago. And I made this based on looking at others, you know, on the internet or whatever in photos. And what I did is that bottom board you see on there where the butts of the gouges are is at a 30-degree angle. And then you can see where I got several slots on the next board up in there, and it's on the top slot there right now. I tried the bottom slot initially, and it wasn't enough to keep the gouge safely in position. Let's put it that way, right? If I bumped it or something, I was a little worried about popping back out again. And I ended up about 5 inches off the bottom of the gouge up is where that support board is. And then the next board up is behind all the gouges, and they just have round slots on them, okay, and on the back side. So all you have to do is reach up there to the gouge you want, and you can see all the ends of the gouges, because that was the problem I had before. I had the gouges facing down, and I never knew which gouge was which. And now I can see all the tips. I can see which one I want. When you reach up there, you just slightly lift it up a little bit and then pull it out towards you, and it comes right out. And when you put it back, you just drop that butt in there, down there, and you can just more or less drop the gouge. It goes down and hits that angled board, and it wedges itself in there, you know, so it holds it tight against there. So, and then the back side of it, the very top board is a French cleat. Now, I haven't built a French cleat for this stand, but I wanted to show you, this was my idea before, but I haven't had to do it, so I didn't do it yet. So, but I have the stand for the next slide. Yep. Yeah, so I have this stand that I use for support, you know, for when I'm cutting stuff on the table saw or on my bandsaw. And what I was going to do is create another French cleat that bolts on there. And then I could just take this off. I mean, it takes literally, you just grab a hold of it, lift it off, and stick it right on there. And then you have a portable tool rack, right? So I could use that for my other lathe. I ended up having another kind of a mobile base for tools at my other lathe, so I didn't end up doing that. But some of you may have that where you need to move your tools around, and these French cleats work really well to do that. And then, as Dan pointed out, you can see on the end of mine, I've got a couple of screws in there, and I've got my headphones and one of the calipers on one end of it there. And I need to do the same thing on the other end, actually put some other calipers on it. I have them hanging on the wall, but I think they'd be better suited to be on here on that. So
Ted,
Just
I have
leaves a
a,
handle on the bottom to make it easier to lift, doesn't it?
what's the weight with all that steel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that bad, actually. I thought it was going to be pretty heavy, but in that gouge, the far gouge on the right, that one-way gouge, that handle is really heavy. It's probably 2 or 3 pounds by itself, just the handle. So, but it's not really that heavy. It's quite easy to maneuver it. No problem.
You didn't ask, but I have a suggestion for a little bit more tool stability. if you take a Forstner into that bottom plate, just a 1/4 inch to give you a place for the butt to rest.
Well, I did that before, Norm. I'm glad you mentioned that. And what I would suggest is I put that bottom board at a 30-degree angle. I would try, if I was going to make another one, I would try a 45-degree angle. And the reason not to have the Forstner, because I did that before, is it just collects sawdust like crazy. And it really doesn't work very well. You're better off with that smooth angle on there. You can see that one gouge is, the problem with that is the handle is so big, it doesn't fit into the rounded slot in the front very well. And I need to carve that out a little bit more so that it fits in there. That and the fact, like I said, I would probably try a 45-degree angle on that bottom board to see if that works a little bit better.
What's the distance from the front support board to the next support board up?
5 inches.
That's the bottom to the first support. What about the distance from the
Oh.
next board?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't tell you precisely, Jeff. I would say it's probably about another 6 inches, but if you shoot me an email, I'll go measure it tomorrow and tell you. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter that much. It depends more on your tools. If you look at the tools on the left end, I built it for those tools basically when I did it, kind of, and they fit perfectly in there, where some of the other ones, you can see they're not so great. Some of them are, the handles are shorter, and some of them, the handles are bigger for that. So you kind of, you can kind of guess it out, which one's going to work best for you.
Yeah, that backboard's really just holding the frame together. It's not really supporting the tools, right?
Yeah, no, it's just, they are rounded in the back too, so that it falls in there, right? And
Except for
so
the
they don't
shorter
slide.
ones. Except for
They
the
don't-
shorter ones. I think that's what Jeff
Yeah.
was getting at.
Yeah, the shorter ones, the board could be lower, but for the rest of them, it wouldn't work as well then. So I took a happy medium. Good questions. Any
You have two
other
backboards.
questions? On that?
On my vertical tool storage, I used a big spoon bit in a brace and drilled a hole for the butt of the tool to sit in, and then drilled a through hole with a smaller diameter that lets the sawdust fall through.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that on one of the models I had earlier, but I still found that they're still piled up with sawdust all the time, all around those tools and everything. So I tried this trick instead.
Jim, you didn't give us any details. Jim Kroger.
I was late putting it in and I just,
Jim, can you get closer to the mic?
yep, I sure can. Is that better?
Not much.
Oh,
I don't know. That's as close as I can get.
Okay.
Go ahead and go to the second one. This is kind of, it's showing the tool rest or the tool holder there. The tool holder is just, I don't know if you have a Powermatic, there's just the thing that would hold the catch or the safety cage. And so there's just this one actually has a bolt through the hole for the safety cage, and then holds into there's a 2 inch or 1 inch, 1.5 inch piece in the middle there with a hole in it. And then the other piece, 1 inch pieces are just pocket screwed onto it. And so it's just handy for me because it puts everything, it just gives you a place for small tools right next to you. Turning a big bow, you have to take it off, but it's just a matter of taking out the screw. The first one I made, I just turned a spigot on it and stuck it in there and but I knocked it off. I had a piece come loose and it broke it. So I used a 5/8 inch bolt, so it shouldn't break the bolt. It might break something else, but that's it. Anyhow, that's a fairly easy thing to make. It's just a bunch of different size holes in a wooden piece. I kind of wanted to show the rest of the stuff on there. the metal pieces are all made out of, for like the lamps. I don't know if you can pick out the lamp stand from the background junk, but anyhow, it's all beach chairs welded together to make the lamp stand, and also the stand that I've got over the top of on the top side of the lathe, where the drill is. Go back to the first picture, probably. Yeah, there. That stand, I've got, I got a light on it. I got my drill hanging up there. I got calipers hanging on it. And so and then there's also a place, there's a catch-all tray that's in the back of it there too. Just gives me a little more flat space, but it's like any other flat space, it normally just gets full of junk. That's the cleanest it's been since.
Do you ever move your lathe?
What's that?
Do you move your lathe very much?
No, not really.
Okay.
But it's under the garage door, so you can't.
So you can't mount anything to the ceiling. I get it.
You can't mount anything to the ceiling. Yes.
Well, you could. It just move around a bit.
Well, you move with the door, I guess. But,
You mean when he opens the door? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
so, yeah, that's about all I wanted to show there. And then that big fan is my dust collection. So in the summertime, you just open, the garage door is open. It just points out the door. In the wintertime, there's a side door. You can kind of see a little bit of the side door. I pointed toward the side door and have it go out the door. So it gets cold in there when I turn the fan on like that, but I got a radiant infrared heater, so I can kind of keep warm with that.
So it's not so much dust collection as it is dust ejection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
In
not
your face.
collecting anything, or
Hey.
hopefully not.
Hey, Jim, on the articulating arm for your light, did you drill into the cast iron or the legs, or how'd you do that?
You can kind of, if you look real close, you can kind of see there's a wooden block there.
Uh-huh.
You need to go up,
Yeah, I can't. I can either zoom in or zoom out on Facebook. I can't.
Okay, but anyhow, if you look at right up where it's out on the lathe, there's a
That's
wooden
good.
block with a bolt through it.
Yeah, but did you bolt that to the leg?
Yes, I just drilled a hole and tapped into the lathe.
Okay, I was wondering about that. Got it. Thanks.
And then you also notice I've got 8 outlets on the back of my lathe. I've got two sets of 4 plug-ins on the back of the lathe that are tapped or that are mounted.
Isn't it amazing how many cords you found out you have?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I've got 2 lights, a drill, always, a fan. So I mean, I've used all of them before at the same time, but I don't know how I did it.
The funny thing is, if you get something heavy enough and out of balance enough to rock that lathe, the whole house is gonna move.
Yeah, that's pretty innovative about the electrical boxes they're hooked on the lathe.
Thanks.
I bolted one of those to the side of my bench top lathe, and it works really well. Fills up very quickly.
Yes, any plug. I mean, it seems like any place I have lots of plugs, you end up with lots of stuff plugged in them, especially with
Hey.
chargers and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
One other comment, just on the fact that your microphone is not picking up real well. When you first start Zoom, there is occasionally an adjustment that you can test the volume of your microphone and speaker, and you may have a setting in whatever electronics you're using to crank the volume up on that.
It's under your video settings.
Okay, I'll look at it. I'll check it
Hey,
next time.
no problem.
All right, well,
Right.
that's good.
One more comment if I could, that power cord from the drill, that's might be a little close to the moving part for safety.
It's farther than it looks like.
Okay,
If it gets in the way, I tuck it behind the tools.
all right.
Oops, wrong way. And I think that, oh, now it's me. Okay. So it's probably because I'm a cheap old Yankee, but I hate wasting stuff. And HDPE plastic is kind of useful because it doesn't, you can't glue anything to it. So it makes a good work surface. And, you know, but for food prep, after a while, they just get worn and stained, and my wife throws them out, or used to throw them out. So I saved this one. And I just put a couple of blocks down so that it goes between the ways and becomes a solid work surface. And I put blocks in both directions so I can run it vertical or horizontal across the ways. And it makes a great little assembly stand, or, you know, applying finish or doing anything I need to do, because I too have very limited shop space. So it's just temporarily and handy. And if you look at the inset photo in the middle there, see if I can zoom in on that. That's another one I had that actually had a cutout for the sink. Like you were chopping food, it had a little basin. And I said, gee, that'd be handy for bumping up against my tailstock. So basically that's another one. I drilled holes to fit my, you know, most frequently used tools. And it actually slides up, and that bar on your left is my tailstock. So I still have plenty of room to push my tailstock into it, and it wraps around. But that plastic is just really nice to work with. It's stable enough, but it's soft enough that if you bang your sharp tool into it, you're not going to hurt your tool. You can cut it in the bandsaw, you can do anything with it.
You just screwed those blocks on there, it looks like, hey?
Yes, well, I put some, I knew it wouldn't last for long, but I put some hot glue just to hold them in place while I screwed them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
They're handy. That stuff is really great for working. It's just you can't really mess it up. I mean, it looks pretty messed up, but that's mainly messed up from knife cuts in the kitchen.
Well, it saves a lot of time in sanding and scraping the glue and the stain off your ways too.
Oh yeah.
You know?
And it just gives me space, because I 10 times I turn around, I'm like, I need 8 inches of space to do something. I can't find it in my shop because I get too much stuff everywhere. This one is, let's get back to size. So we've all done this. You get your square blanks when you're not working with a log. You got square blanks and you cut them around on the bandsaw, right? And I asked Steve, I said, what are you doing? He says, well, they go in my burn pile. It's like, yeah, that's with me too. All those corners just go in the burn pile. I recently did a bunch of platters, and I'm like, gee, that's such a waste. Is there anything I can do? So I just kind of went to the bandsaw and played around for a while, and came up with this simple design for and I didn't know what it was, but my wife came up with the idea. Let me show you what they are. They're just little holders for incense. Stick your incense stick in, you light it up, it burns incense. It's the simplest, silliest thing out there, but it uses something that would otherwise burn. And if it's a nice piece of wood, I hate to throw it in the burn pile. And it's really not that involved to do, especially if you get a bucket of these corners at once. You just pile through them all. So I basically take one of the corners, cut it rough, you know, pick a spot that says this is about the same distance, and square off both sides. I just want to get rid of that sharp end that might be if you cut it close. And then I lay it on its side, put it up against the fence right up to the saw. So I figure out where the bottom is. And then I move the fence, whatever bottom thickness I want, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. And then I just do a pass through cut, and that gives me the shape. And the rest is just all on the belt sander, just rounding it out. The trickiest thing is to figure out the drill points. I said you can use the drill press. I ended up using a hand drill, just because for each one, given the width, you might want to change the angle that you're putting that at, because you don't want the burning segment hanging out over the piece. So I just eyeball it. The length of my drill is about the length of your standard incense stick. and just point it in 3/32 of an inch or smaller, drill the hole, and it mounts, and it's good to go. It's stuff I'll give away, but I'd rather give something away than burn it.
Yeah, exactly. It's very innovative.
Hey, just for anybody else that does round things, I do a lot of cylindrical things and I want to resaw them the length. Those make great little wedgies to stabilize that piece. You hot glue them onto the piece that you're working on and you can use them to run through your bandsaw. So it's just another way to use that scrap.
Oh, that's good, because I after doing this, I got a bunch of these. I was thinking about gluing them up, but yeah, they are handy. It's just wedge straps. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anything to keep good wood out of the burn pile. I'm going to go back to the beginning because I noticed Stefan joined us, and I'm wondering if, hold on a sec, did Greg join us
I'll check while you're doing that.
or Jim Duxbury?
Yeah.
I
yeah,
joined,
Greg-
yeah, I
Greg,
joined.
Greg's here.
Greg,
I joined. Yeah.
Oh, Dick's
excellent.
here. All right. Jim's here too. Okay.
There's Jim.
Okay,
Jim's here.
okay. So, Norm, show the other picture first.
Everybody, okay, everybody needs to number the pictures 1 and 2.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, you're the 10th person to say, show the other one.
All right, so this is, sorry if I'm late. I had to run a mission of mercy at a nursing home. This is not specifically wood turning, but probably many of you have an ambient air filtration system such as this. I think the big brands are Jet and Powermatic. I also have dust collection, and Steve, I just installed the Supercell that you helped advise me on. That's working great. But so for the ambient air, it does a great job of cleaning fine dust, but the technology has changed, and Jet and I think Powermatic probably have not kept up with this. When you have a filter here, that filter you're looking at, a dust filter, Jet charges like $50 or something for that, and it comes as a MERV 9 filter. Well, the years have gone down, and the standard, I buy MERV 13 dust filters, which are not quite HEPA, but which they filter out a whole lot more than the MERV 9 that comes standard with my Jet. So I just buy an aftermarket air filter for about $17 rather than $50, and I get better filtration. Exact same form factor, but the trick is what you see hanging above it is the carbon filter. I have a small shop in the basement, and I will do finishing in there. I don't do too much that's toxic anymore. I use a lot of shellac and water-based stuff, but when it does get smelly, I've found, to my surprise, that the air filtration system does a really good job of getting the smells out and not migrating upstairs to where my wife is. So flip to the other picture, please, Norm.
Oh.
No, that one. Okay, so I just hang this, you see, with twist ties. I hang a carbon filter. Now, by looking at my Jet filter manual, they say, oh, you want to filter out chemical smells, then you would get an activated carbon filter, which we will sell you for $70, and you would put that in place instead of the dust filter. Well, that's a pain to swap that over. And your carbon filter is going to get a lot of dust on it when you're really burning dust. So I just do both. I just swing it down, and I get the benefits of the MERV 13 filter above and the carbon filter for bad smells. And then when I'm done with it, I swing it back up. Oh, that's pretty much it.
That's a great idea, Greg. So where do you get the charcoal or the carbon filter?
It's a good question. I get them both off of Amazon Prime, and it's just a stock MERV 13 Filtrete brand filter. Amazon recommends. For the carbon filter, what I'm doing is I buy. It's like fabric. I get the extra thick stuff. It's 3/8 inch rather than 1/4 inch. And I buy a sheet of it for less than $20, and I cut it to size. You see, I've got a bit of a plastic grid on it. The
Yeah.
first time I did it, I bought it with the plastic grid. I haven't been able to find that, but you could modify a discarded filter, or you could use
Mhm.
not chicken wire, but what's the metal stuff that's quarter inch, you know, to
Cable
give it
ties,
some
yeah.
strength. In reality, I don't have to have that, you know, kind of 1-inch plastic frame over it, because once you turn on the filter,
Mhm.
it sucks that carbon filter in
Sure.
there and it seals quite well.
Sure.
It's easier to swing away though.
Yeah.
So
very
where
nice.
where'd you get the carbon filter material though?
On Amazon, you
On
just,
Amazon, hey? Okay.
yeah, you just look up, I'm losing the right words. It's, you know, it's a charcoal filter
Yeah,
material.
yeah. Okay.
Good idea.
Look here.
Oh yeah, I've got all the details there. You've got my numbers. So that shows exactly what I ordered on Amazon, you know, the items 3, 3, and 4. So what we're talking about, we're just
Yeah.
asking about was number 4. And I got the 16 by 50 MERV 7 cut to size activated carbon filter. So, you know, for dust, I'm actually getting MERV 7 plus MERV 13 when I swing it down. When I
Yep.
swing the carbon filter back up, you know, I've got MERV 13, which is a heck of a lot better than the expensive jet filter.
So that
Yeah, I
grill
like-
alone is like a MERV -3. Never mind.
A MERV -3?
The chicken wire.
Oh, yes, yeah. There's next to nothing there. There's just structure there.
Yeah. Hey, Greg,
Keeps the
Yeah.
big
I
shavings
do.
out.
Yeah, I like
Greg,
it
I've got a
because
similar air scrubber like you have, and mine doesn't have an actual replaceable filter. It's got one of those cloth things that you take outside and pound and use an air compressor on it or whatever.
Yeah,
So to cut that down, I bought my form factor is 1 foot by 2 foot. So I go to the hardware store and buy 2 or 3 regular house filters and put them in front of that so I can throw them away without changing out my big filter.
okay, good. Yeah, and you know, I didn't mention that inside this box, there's not much more to the jet filter than a box and a fan. There is another filter that, you know, which is cloth, like you mentioned, and Jet would like to sell me a replacement for that, but I don't think I'll ever replace that. I just take the other 2 filters off and put my shop back in there and dust it off, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I also have
you can
the,
use hardware cloth for the mesh too.
Thank you. That is the name I was trying to think of. Hardware cloth, which is like 1/4-inch galvanized, 1/4-inch holes in galvanized steel.
Or half inch is
Yeah,
more common.
okay.
Yeah.
so I have one of those cloth filters inside mine, and I pull it out once in a while and take it outside with a leaf blower. Works really good to
Yeah.
blow out the dust.
Mhm.
Unless
Now,
you
there's
like
my
that.
air
those
gun for
jet
mine.
Filters that if anybody runs into, I just had mine break and I looked it up and I could pay like $250 for a new board. It
Wow.
actually, there's a single capacitor on the board that fails, and I think I paid $1.19 on Amazon. Soldered a new capacitor in, and now it works great. So if yours does fail, look it up on Amazon as a repair, and you'll find, not on Amazon, on Google, and you'll find a repair just to replace the one capacitor that typically fails.
That's cool.
So $1.19 versus 250 or so.
Yeah.
I had the same problem with an AC unit in our house. Thought it was gonna be like, you know, $1,000 for an AC unit, and it was like $20 for a capacitor.
Yep.
So
They fail.
you're reminding me of another tip, and it's still loosely related to wood turning. So I have a couple of electric chainsaws, which I take, you know, canoeing to clear things. problems is electric chainsaws don't like to have the blade go underwater. So I've learned that rather than buy a new chainsaw for $250, I can buy a new circuit board for my chainsaw. I like telling people that, yeah, I just replaced the circuit board on my chainsaw. I've done that twice, and that costs like about $65, works just great.
Right.
And questions, that's it.
No, thanks for sharing that. That filter thing is, because I use my
Very nice.
filter mostly for when I have fumes in my shop, and because I have a dust collector system, so I don't use it for dust collecting that much. And but when I had fumes in there, I turn it on, and it looks like it would help even more. So thanks for that.
What do
Yeah,
you-
going away
what-
from turning, I cut acrylics on my laser. And anytime I do, I have my wife and daughter come downstairs talking about the stink. So maybe this will help the acrylic smell too.
I think
Check
so.
the, excuse me, check the Amazon link that I put up in the chat, because I think that's what you're talking about.
What do you do with the used filter?
I throw it out.
So
Yeah.
whenever it starts smelling funny, you throw it away and put a new one up.
This time, I don't know that it had degraded, but I'd had the carbon filter up for 2-3 years, and I figured it was about time. The replacement was cheap, and I just replace it. For the MERV 13 filter behind it, I should probably replace it more often because they're cheap, but it's, I just put an attachment on my shop vac with the brushes and dust it off, and it still goes pretty well. So
Yeah, I do
run
the
it for
same
a few
thing.
years.
Yeah, I do the same thing. And you
Or
can
take
buy
it
those.
outside and beat it against your deck rail and then blow it off.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I use the leaf blower on those filters too.
Yeah.
I use the vacuum first, and then I take it out in the backyard with the air gun and blow it out from both sides.
That's what I use compressed air to blow it out. Yeah. But I could use my leaf blower. That would be faster probably.
Works on car air filters too.
At a higher level up, does that unit keep dust from getting in your shop?
Well, yes, but it's like, second
Collects
best.
it.
You're definitely better to have a powerful dust collector, because I still do a lot of vacuuming, and
It only works on airborne dust.
yeah,
Right.
I mean
So-
it's good for my lungs and the smells, but it's not going to prevent you from sweeping if you
I mean,
can't.
It's a
I've got the-
secondary system. Use your dust collector first, but this is a great secondary system for, like as Norm says, for airborne dust that's there regardless of your dust collector.
It's not
But
going to
when
clean your
when
floor
I'm
or your
turning-
surfaces.
When I'm turning, like I've got a jet dust collector. And when I'm done turning, I've got, a half a trash can full of shavings and dust. And so even with my dust collector running, maybe I don't have the right attachment or set up correctly, but I almost have just given up on trying to dust collect while I'm turning. Is everybody?
Don't dust collect while you turn. I mean, those shavings aren't going to stop up your lungs. Dust collect while you sand.
While you stand, yeah, okay, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, I one caveat to that is that when you're turning certain dry woods, they create a lot of dust.
Yeah, I see that too, Ted.
True.
Greenwood,
true.
you don't get much dust. So what I do is I turn my dust collector on, but I move the collector back away from the piece, maybe, I don't know, 1.5 feet or something. And the shavings then go down and hit the floor or whatever. And the dust then gets sucked to the dust collector, and it picks all the dust off, and it makes a huge difference, both for breathing. I don't have to wear, a mask so much then when I do that, but also just, from piling up in the shop, dust. So just move it back far enough so it's not pulling the shavings and you're just cleaning the dust, let the shavings hit the floor.
Paducah is the worst. I mean, you're exactly right, Ted. Paducah, you have shavings, but you always have that red dust that gets everywhere. So that's a great idea.
So there are two great tips in the AAW list of tips and tricks that, you know, I just received for the first time several months ago. And there are hundreds of them. I imagine you'll be submitting some there, but for dust collection at the lathe, the two I really liked is one guy used that, it's like plastic cardboard, the kind you have for political machines, like corrugated plastic board.
Yep.
He just used it as a board and shaped, you know, a custom size hood behind his lathe.
Yeah,
The
Preston's
other
done
one,
something like that. That was his demo last year, I think.
okay, the other one that was appealing is that, what do they call it? Lock line parts. There's this 2.5, you get 1 1/4, 2.5 inch hose, which is completely articulated. It's lock line, LOCLINE. And you can have a filter. You could put it right inside a bowl, for example. You know, you could position it within inches and then hook that up to your dust collector. And I was thinking I would get one of these. Rockler has a ducting that I just bought one for my router table, that it takes a 4-inch hose, and then it also has a 2-inch pipe coming off it. So you get the 4-inch hose, goes to a box under the router, which is, you know, a huge dust creator. And then you take another hose that goes to the top, which is the only place I collect dust on my router right now, and it does a lousy job. So I think I'm going to try doing it above and below, but I could do the same on the lathe, have one big gulp dust collection behind the turning thing, and this lock line small hose that goes inside the bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you try to collect shavings, I don't care if you have a 4 or 6 inch system or whatever, it's going to clog on those big shavings. I haven't found anything that'll get the shavings.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
just have to let them go to the floor.
Yeah, and it ends up just, it plugs up stuff, but also you just end up emptying stuff and cleaning it out constantly from that.
And a lot of them are going to come at you anyway and never hit that system.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you're better off to let those hit the floor and just go after the dust.
You switch from the left to the right hand, it goes a completely different place anyway. So
I found that I put a 30-gallon storage bin
absolutely
under the lathe, and it's amazing how much of my shavings fall into that bin.
Yeah, I do
And
the
it's-
same.
Yeah,
And those metal
that's-
parts.
It does really well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
but it's easy to
strategically
get them
move
out
it.
of there sometimes.
Yeah.
All right,
All
Jim.
right, Jim.
Okay,
The
sorry.
corrugated plastic, by the way, is very cheap on Amazon. I made my wife a whelping box for our puppies, and that comes in. Oh, I've forgotten the sheets. It's something like 12 by 24 inch sheets for. They're very inexpensive. So that plastic corrugated material is very inexpensive, and you can form it to any shape you want. So that was a good idea too.
All right. Jim, you want to take us?
You know me?
Yep,
Okay.
you're next to last now.
Okay. Before I open any can, most of the time, I'm not looking to get a quart or even a full cup full of any of these finishes. I need a few drops.
Yeah.
Before I open any of the cans, I punch it and put a metal screw in there. And that way I can just take the metal screw out, or on a metal can, sometimes I just loosen the screw and squeeze it, and the air doesn't get back into it.
If you look at this tongue oil on the end here, the Minwax tongue oil, the date on that is 1999. It's about a quarter full and it's still good. I just don't throw finishes out. I use what I want. There's no dripping, there's no nothing. Even on the big stuff, the big gallon cans, I punch a hole in the corner and take the screw out. You can pour a little bit, or if you want to use it, you can unlock or undo the other side, the lid, and you can pour a nice little stream. Or if you want to pour a big stream, you can take the screw out and the lid off and pour it. It doesn't gurgle and do all that stuff. But even on the glass jars, I mix my own stuff.
Just an awl? Just use a steel awl and a hammer?
Yeah, just in fact, I use an awl in the back of my hand or front of my hand, just smack it. The thing next to that's a plastic. I have a hard time. I'm using my pointer, Norm. Anyway, that plastic bottle next to it, I just punch a hole in that and put a screw in it. It just works great. So even stains that don't have to be mixed, or if you have to mix them, I shake them up good and take the screw out and pour a little bit of stain on a rag and use it. So.
But you're going to get a leak if you knock those over, right? A slow leak.
No, not really. Well, yeah, maybe a slow leak, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend them for knocking them over, but I have them sitting on a shelf and every one of them has a screw hole in it before I even look at it.
I like that this is helping your finish last longer, because if you just use the screw hole, a lot less air is getting into the finish.
Yep.
Well, a lot of times I don't even take the screw out. Like on the tongue oil, a lot of times I'm just using a really little bit. So I loosen the screw or the Danish oil, but on tongue oil especially, you get the half a can and let it sit for a couple of years, you've got a solid mess. And like I say, that you can see this if you want. The date on it's a 99. It's still, I don't know, it's so good. Even the little jars down below, I don't know why that one has two screw holes in it. Must have been a special day. I have no idea.
You had it spare.
Yeah, I can tell you've done this for a while. You got all those slot-headed screws.
Oh yeah.
I think I threw all mine away years ago.
No, that's what I use them for.
You want them to use torque, so we have to go dig in for the special driver?
Yeah.
I finally have a use for mine.
Square drive.
I was in sheet metal. We had ductwork all over, and I've got more of those than I care to mention. But anyway, that works great.
I know why you get two screws. I bet. So on that one, the lid got sealed and you wanted a faster pour. So the second hole gave you an air hole.
I can't imagine why it probably, you pour it in one and it goes out the other one. Okay?
There you go.
Something like that. It really works great.
That's a great idea. I'll be popping holes in mine tomorrow.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that I've discovered the hole, so I would punch a hole so I could have just a slight bit, like you say. And I wasn't smart enough to come up with the screws. So thank you, Jim.
Hey, actually, I've used the same kind of thing, that when you get down toward the end of the can, you can't really get that last bit out. But when you're down to that last little bit you want out, like the alcohol or whatever, take the screw out and pour it.
Yep. No lip to worry about.
Yeah. Use that for some laundry detergent and other stuff too.
Probably. Oh, this is another one. I make a lot of little stuff. Sometimes for Christmas, we make these deer pins. They're about 3 inches high and they look like a deer. And when you try to hold the piece and sand it with an oscillating sander, in no time you have no fingerprints and the back of your knuckles are gone, and you just can't do it. So I made this holder up. It fits in my vise, and it holds there's a drawband around the sander. It's a yoke. And there's a clamp. You can see this thing holds the sander, and you put the piece underneath it, back out a little bit. You can index this. It goes into this holder I think that's 1.25 inches square. So you take this black clamp here and unloosen that, and you can index that around to any position. You put it on top or the sides or whatever you want. It works beautiful. I use that all the time. Also, if you want to change your sandpaper, the sander's sitting there. You just pull it off and you index the holes and stick it back on. On this, you see there's a red filter on the back of the sander. On big jobs, I hook that to my dust collector, and it sucks. It really sands great when you hook that to your dust collector, because it is
Don't have the hose dragging around on you. That's great.
no, it's sucking the sanding dust right out of the sandpaper, and it sands up a storm of that. But that thing really works. I've got 2 different sanders will fit on that now.
That's a great idea.
Jim, where did you get the little black handle?
The guy next door to me threw out a computer desk. It had this long 1/4 inch bolt with the handle attached to it, 2 of them on there. And I thought, damn, there's got to be a use for that somewhere.
Oh,
I
you're
have
worse
no
than me,
idea.
Jim.
I have no idea where you get another one.
I've got, I could tell you another use for them is on an exercise bike. My wife's exercise bike, that handle broke and I'm looking for one.
Oh, okay. Well,
Rockler or Woodcraft. Definitely Rockler. You can buy those.
Oh, cool.
yeah.
A lot of the hardware stores like Lowe's, they have that specialty section with all kinds of different hardware. You can find handles like that in there too.
Well, actually, a good wood turner with a carriage bolt, you could turn a knob, stick a carriage bolt through there, and put a nut on the other side of it with a washer.
Sure,
I might end up doing that.
Huh?
Peloton's gonna
funny,
want
I
20
was-
bucks for one.
I was
Or you could-
sanding 16th inch plywood last night using a finishing sander, and I was trying to hold it still in my lap. So that would work really great.
Oh, you can't imagine how many times you use this thing, even on a
Yeah.
big piece of 2x4 or something.
sure.
It's just so nice. You can see what you're doing, and you got both hands on the piece. It just works.
Jim, I want to, we're way ahead of schedule tonight. So I want to impose on your engineering genius
Oh,
about sanding small things and keeping your fingers. So I got some flat burl that I picked up online, and over the break, I did a 2 dozen little jewelry pendants that sit in a little holder. And I thought I was real clever. I started them between centers with a soft touch, rounded them, gave myself a tiny little ledge so that I could put them in some jaws. And now they're all perfect except for one thing. My ledge is just a tiny bit too deep. So I have all these less than 1 inch round domes that I want to sand the back off of. But I like my fingers, as you said.
Oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. You can do, I've done pieces smaller than that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Do it on
perfect. You put it at, yep, absolutely perfect. You put it on its side, and you can hold the piece. You can hold a piece half that size, really, and not get your fingers into it.
I'll give it a shot. That's
Hey,
true.
Jim-
Any other sander it would take it out of my fingers and fly away.
yeah,
But
yeah,
on this
yeah.
one it won't, right? Got it.
So Jim, you can take and turn that 90 degrees as well, can you? Yeah, I was limited to 2 photographs, okay? I have photographs of it in all positions. Yeah. If you'd like me to do a stream, I'd be glad. You can see it here. That's on the bottom, but it'll turn on its side, it'll turn on the top. It'll also come out and go into the other side.
So if
Yeah.
you wanted it on the other side for some reason, you could do
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, okay. Now, do you
Very
have
cool.
do you have plans drawn up for this thing?
If you want, I'll send you a PDF on an article, has the whole thing, how to do every step.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to have it because I use my sander a lot and I've been clamping it in the vise, which is not healthy for the sander. And
Yeah,
it'd be better to do
Round
this.
things just love to be clamped in vices.
Yeah.
Well, you'll love this because you can position it. Also, like I said, take that red filter off, which doesn't do anything anyway, and hook it
Yeah,
to your
that's-
dust collector, and it's another machine. It's just
Yeah, that's how I have mine hooked to my dust collector at all times.
yeah.
With a hose. So
Oh, this way also, if you want to change sandpaper, you just pull it off and you hold the new piece up there. It's not like you're trying to balance things and stick it on the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
position. You just hold it up there and put it on it.
Yeah.
It just, in fact, I've got two sanders now. I use one's under the bench and one's mounted, and I use the mounted one 98% of the time, I think.
yeah.
Any reason for the cutouts at the bottom of your upright piece there?
Yeah, you're very observant. That fits
Really?
over the bar and the screw on my vise. So
Oh, on the vise,
it
yeah.
interlocks into the bottom and I clamp it in the top so that you could drive your car over this without moving. It's made out of ash. I think it's about a 3 by inch and a quarter, or about 1 inch and a quarter by 3, the main part of it. But really, I'll send a PDF to. You want it, Ted? And
Yeah.
put it in the newsletter. Put it wherever you want. I don't care.
Yeah, we can
But I-
post it on the
Post it on the
website.
website.
On the web.
Yep, under documents.
Sure.
Yep.
I have probably 200 of these different ideas. I wish I'd do the whole meeting, but anyway,
Well, hey, that's maybe a future demonstration.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe sometime.
Yeah.
Or
The
a
Duxbury
book,
Hour.
or a book.
Some of them, yeah. People go in my shop and they come out amazed. It's some of them are not the most orthodox solutions to things. But anyway,
I'd come
So-
out with a chip full of pictures.
you what?
I just want to mention you complained about the limit of 3 photos. It's okay to send more than 3 photos, but just understand that I'm going to take liberties. Like I will superimpose photos on photos if it makes sense. Because like this photo right here, there's a lot of dead space there. So if you had sent me a 3rd photo, I would have
Okay.
shrunk one of them and put it over.
Okay.
Norm,
I don't want 5 photos, but if it takes an extra one, it's not going to be a big deal.
No, I almost
Show him
did.
the one you did on mine, because I sent you 3 photos and you.
Oh yeah, that was a bit of a hassle. I don't know where yours is. There it is.
was a
Yeah.
Good way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you get that it's a disc sander, you don't really need to see all the disc sander again.
Right.
Okay.
So I was able to sandwich those in like that. But let's get to our last one. Stefan, you have joined us, right?
Yeah, I've been here all along, except for the first few minutes.
Except for when we had your stuff up.
So this is my photo studio underneath the roof in the storage space. And I used to struggle to know where should I take the photos of my wood turnings. And in the workshop, it's too dusty. And then I was in the living room and the computer room, and then I always had to take it down. We have 4 children. There's not that much space to keep it up. So I was always putting it up, taking it down, until I had the idea, which is not really highly sophisticated as you guys are, computer programmers and engineers, but it's just a space underneath the roof. It gets hot and cold during the season, but I can leave it up all the time. Just food for thought if you're wondering where to do your photography. Maybe you have some extra space somewhere.
Good idea.
Yeah. You have to worry about changing lights. No sunlight shadows.
Excellent.
That's nice.
And then the second thing is also not highly sophisticated at all, but it's just a down to earth great recommendations that some of you have given or that I've seen. I used to use anchor seal to coat my wooden blanks after I chainsawed them and rough turned them, or either one, either chainsawed or rough turned. And yeah, that always took some time. And then probably about a year ago or so, maybe not, half a year ago, people started to use this cling wrap. And you can buy that, the big roll and the small roll at Lowe's or Home Depot. And it's so quickly done. I used to run into the problem that I got wood with my chainsaw and then I wouldn't have the time to do the anchor seal. I hoped I could rough turn it and all, and then it would just crack over time. And now I can rapidly either the blanks themselves or the rough turn pieces. It's the blanks themselves that are cling wrap. Once I have rough turn, I typically then anchor seal them because I've already taken the time to rough turn, but it's really having the blanks to immediately just wrap them up. Also not highly sophisticated, but it works really well for me.
Just beware of one thing. Cling wrap will buy you weeks. Anchor seal will buy you months, generally speaking. It's a seal. It's not as good a seal as anchor seal.
So I'll experiment with it and I'll see. I haven't used it that long. The other thing that's good, Norm, thank you. The other thing to consider is I've just observed there's a lot of humidity that collects and it seems to spalt more.
Yep.
So that may be good or may not be so good.
Well, it's an indicator of the seal not being quite as good.
I don't think that's exactly how it works, though, is it? The anchor seal is designed to let the moisture through so that the wood will dry. And the plastic is designed to just seal it up tight. And of course, if you seal it up tight, then certain things will start to grow more than if you have it open to the air. So it's a different process.
And the combination might work out pretty well too, because I noticed that you're not sealing the ends of those pre-turned blanks. And that's where most of the moisture comes out.
That's a cross grain piece. I think he's wrapped the end grain. It's the cross grain.
I got you. Okay.
But what I've experienced, Stefan, with that is here, in my shop in the summertime, it gets warm and the moisture between the wood and the plastic, I get a lot of mold. Starts growing in there. It does. I think it does, like you said, wood spalts, maybe more like that, but you have to really watch it for mold.
So Ted, what's your concern with the mold on the surface? I mean, it's not going deep into the wood, and you're going to be wearing your respirator and being careful anyway.
You can turn it off. Yep, you can turn it off. I don't like having mold around, I guess, is part of it. I don't know. You can deal with it, like you said, but I'd rather, I've had some wood that the mold gets in it and I can't get it out. Even I turn off the mold on it, it is like penetrates down through the straws or the fibers of it, and I never get rid of it.
Yeah, I think I use the plastic method exclusively because, I found that I can cut and wrap up a piece of wood tight. If I can't get to it for several months, when I do open it up to put it on the lathe to rough turn it, it's basically like the day I wrapped it up.
No, I think
it's been really good for me. Instead of having it sit and crack.
Yep, I think exactly what you said too, Mark, is right. Is that, if you can't get to it right away, whatever, which I tend to throw it in the wood pile and then I got cracks and stuff in it. So this is a much better method. It gives you a few more months to essentially get to it and do something with it. I would just say over the summer period, it probably doesn't work as well as it does the rest of the year.
You have to watch it, and you have to be prepared that some things might start to grow.
Yeah.
That's
you,
the show.
Stefan.
We've been through everybody's.
All right. Good deal.